God-level duplication system. Chapter 46. Power and Influence. The great elder of the outer sect stood at the front of the square, beside Shu Anlin, a true disciple with a cold expression. On the square, a large number of outer disciples gathered. The great elder looked around the audience and saw that the time was almost up, so he said loudly, "This outer sect contest will be presided over by the old man. Let me first talk about the big competition rewards that you are most concerned about. As in the past, there will be rewards for reaching the top 20. For the top 20, 100 Zongmin contribution points will be rewarded. The top 10 will be rewarded with 200 contribution points. The top 3 will be rewarded with 500 contribution points. The second place will be rewarded with 1,000 contribution points. The first place will be rewarded with 3,000 contribution points." The words fell and there was an uproar on the field. All the disciples were shocked and very excited. Even the top 3 masters of the outer sect are like this. You know, in previous competitions, the top 20 would be rewarded with a maximum of 50 contribution points. The first place will not exceed 1,000. But now, at least they are doubled, and the first place has tripled. How could they not be ecstatic? Even Chen Yuzi, the number 1 outer sect master who had already broken through the Qi transformation realm, looked overjoyed. Another 3,000 contribution points were credited, and this time there was nothing wrong. In the crowd, Lin Xuan's eyes also flickered. "Contribute points?" Lin Xuan whispered in his heart. He also has some understanding of this contribution point, that is, the internal circulation of Liu Yanzong is equivalent to the existence of currency. You can go to the martial arts pavilion to exchange for martial arts and purchase training resources. Even if there are enough contribution points, the elders can be invited to give special guidance. It can be said that in Liu Yanzong, except for a few major inheritances, you can buy everything you want. The most direct manifestation is that 10 contribution points can be exchanged for a defective spirit stone, but not the other way around. Just imagine. But he didn't expect that this competition would reward so many contribution points. If he can win the top few places, he has enough training resources to break through the Qi transformation realm. Immediately, I looked a little more at this big competition in my heart. Quiet. The great elder pressed his hands in vain, and a thunderous sound came out, shaking everyone on the field to their blood. Is this the power of a powerhouse in the open spirit realm? Lin Xuan's eyes were fiery. Feeling the coercion, he was even more eager for martial arts. The field also fell silent. All the disciples didn't dare to make any more moves, and looked at the great elder in awe. The great elder then continued. "Okay, next, Dobby begins. The first item in the big competition, break into the puppet tower, come with me." After finishing speaking, he turned around and walked outside the martial arts arena. Shu Anlin, the true disciple, stood side by side with the great elder, and the other deacons of the outer sect followed behind. After that, there are all the disciples. This is the rule of the previous big competitions. First use the puppet tower to eliminate most of them and decide the top 20, and then conduct a duel. All the disciples are used to it. The top 10 in the outer gate are all standing in the front, and the old disciples are in the back. At the end are the old disciples with poor strength and ordinary talents, or the new disciples who are just watching the excitement. This is also the unspoken rule of the outer door. Lin Xuan walked straight forward. Squeeze to the front. The location of the top 10 outside the door is very close to the great elder and Shu Anlin, within 10 meters. Exactly within the range of replication. Lin Xuan would not miss such an opportunity. Lin Xuan's strange behavior immediately attracted the attention of many disciples. Who is this guy? How dare he push forward? That's a position that can only be occupied by outsiders. You don't even know him. Really, he is the most potential new disciple, Lin Xuan, who is rumored to be the number 1 genius in the outer sect recently. If it's Lin Xuan, even if his cultivation base is not high, he should be qualified to stand at the forefront and be tied with the top 10 outside the gate, right? The disciples were discussing in low voices, and the noise continued. Amidst the attention and discussion of all the disciples, Lin Xuan quickly came to the front of the crowd and was tied with the top 10 of the outer sect. When the 10 disciples in front of the outer sect suddenly saw one more person, their faces turned cold. A few people wanted to expel them. This is the top 10 field of their outer door, which represents their status. Ordinary disciples dare to come in, is it a provocation to them? How can we be indifferent? However, when they gathered their eyes and saw Lin Xuan, their expressions froze and their movements stopped involuntarily. As the top 10 of the outer sect, not only are they very strong, but they have basically reached the peak of Qi gathering realm. There are also a group of younger brothers who agree and pass on the news. The situation outside the door is well known. They knew about the sudden emergence of Lin Xuan. Especially Lin Xuan's various performances shocked them even more. Fortunately, Lin Xuan has only just started. When Lin Xuan rose up, they all entered the inner door. Will not be crushed by Lin Xuan. They just recovered a bit. Now seeing Lin Xuan rushing to the front, in their top 10 fields, several people looked at each other in blank dismay, not knowing what to do. It stands to reason that Lin Xuan's current strength is impossible to match them and he is not qualified to rank with them. But Lin Xuan's talent is too high and terrifying. If they expelled Lin Xuan, it would be miserable for Lin Xuan to rise up in the future and want to take revenge on them. But if they don't expel them, letting a new disciple enter their top 10 fields will damage their dignity. As a last resort, several people looked forward. Chen Yuzi, who was number 1 in the outer sect. Seeing this, Chen Yuzi nodded and said no. The rest of the top 10 were relieved. Now that the boss has spoken, they don't need to take any action. Let Lin Xuan stay here. Don't worry too much about it, just pretend you didn't see it. After all, although Lin Xuan is now known as the number 1 genius in the outer sect, he is still not their opponent. Ask them to bend their knees to please them, but they still can't do it. In fact, what they didn't know was that when their boss, Chen Yuzi, the number 1 expert in the outer sect, looked over, Lin Xuan also happened to sense it and turned his head over. The two looked at each other and Chen Yuzi's heart trembled as if he felt that Lin Xuan was his great enemy. Chen Yuzi didn't dare to make any moves and let Lin Xuan walk at the forefront in the top 10 fields. And that was just for a moment. Chen Yuzi wasn't sure if it was an illusion. But he couldn't help feeling a little jealous of Lin Xuan in his heart. Lin Xuan didn't know that because he rushed to the front, there was such a big turmoil. Moreover, just one look scared Chen Yuzi. He also didn't know that there were all kinds of unspoken rules in the outer sect. However, even if he knew, he wouldn't care. This is the world of martial arts where the strong are respected and the strength is above everything else. What unspoken rules, but one punch to break it. If someone dares to stop him, he will let the opponent taste his fist. In this outer sect, not to mention the 3 experts in the top 3 of the outer sect, and the other 10 or so people in the outer sect, he is still somewhat sure. At this time, Lin Xuan didn't pay much attention to other aspects. He didn't know how much turmoil he caused in the rear because he came to the top 10 fields and was safe and sound. He was staring at the front, the great elder and true disciple Xu Anlin who were less than 10 meters away.